Let's build a twisted snowman.
What you want, what you want.
Alright, so some of the things or supplies we're going to need to do this little easy project is papier-mâché paste. We're going to need newspaper, of course. You're going to need some masking tape, some baling wire or coat hanger that we're going to use to make arms. We're going to need some cardboard, some thin light cardboard like a Dr. Pepper box or beer box or whatever, or even a cereal box, some thin, easy to manipulate cardboard. We're going to use that when we make hat, things like that. Toothpick, possibly a couple of them, so we can make some teeth with them. We're going to use hot glue on this when we do our arms, and that should pretty well be all we need. If there's something else I think of along the way, I'll let you know. But as far as mache paste goes on this one, it can just be the standard flour and water mix, because I do not intend for this thing to go outside. This is going to be an indoor decoration, so flour and water will work just fine. First thing we're going to do is create the armature for our snowman, which is 3 little balls, one progressively smaller than the other, or one bigger than the other, depending on where you start. I'm going to start with the base, so we're going to go bigger, smaller, and we're going to do that just by wadding up a bunch of newspaper and creating our balls. Alright, now we got our 3 balls created, and we're going to mache these things up. Now, one thing to remember, when you do these smaller balls, your bigger ball, bigger strips of newspaper, covers faster and easier. But when you get down to these smaller ones, if you want that strip paper to lay flatter to this with less wrinkles, you use smaller strips of paper. Alright, so we got the base all done. These 3 balls are finished up. We just let these set overnight, let them dry up, and we'll start off on the next part. Alright, so it's been basically 24 hours set overnight. These are pretty well dry. There's still some weak spots that probably need some more coverage, but I'm going to go ahead and do this a little bit different, because when I set this one up, I want it to be hollow in the inside, because I'm going to set a light in here, and when we're all done, I want the eyes to light up. And I'm going to paint them. It's actually a bright neon kind of pink, but I'm hoping dark enough with a light it kind of comes out looking red when you're looking at it. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to cut these all the way in half and pull them off the ball, or pull them off that tape ball on the inside. That way we can paint the insides of these since they're so small. Then we'll put them back together and then mache them and get these put into place. Okay, so here's the thing. These things aren't quite dry. They're still kind of soft. So before I move on to the next step, I've got these cut. They're hollow now, which will allow them to dry much, much faster. Anytime you can do a mache project if it's actually hollow in the inside, and if you add more layers to it, if it's dry, if it's hollow on the inside, it'll dry way faster. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let these set and dry longer before I add paint to the inside and glue them together, and then strip mache it. So just gonna let this thing dry. Alright, so these things are dried up now. Continue on. I'm just going to paint the insides of these and then layer them again with mache and get them ready to stick together as a snowman. So this piece is going to be the head. This piece here is going to be the head. We're going to paint the inside of this. This is more of a pink color, just hoping it'll light up red. Heck, it might not even light up real good the way I'm going to do it, but we'll see. So here's the idea. So the idea is I'll have a hole in the bottom of this where we'll just let it set a light right over the top of this, and I want to paint the inside of this ball white, the inside of the second ball white, so that the light reflects from the bottom and goes up to the top, so hopefully it'll reflect red. I want to keep everything bright and white on the inside, that way that light bounces around and moves to the top. So that's the idea. When we're all done with this, we will see how well it works. Alright, so now we're just going to take these, tape them back up, and mache them back together again. Alright, so far we created our balls, cut them in half, unstuffed them, painted them on the inside, red and white. I'm hoping this light thing's going to work, don't really know. And then I mached them back together. Last thing you saw, we just mached the center part. I went ahead and layered these things again, probably another two to three times, just because I wanted them to be as stout as possible. And they've been out for about 24 hours. This is still a little wet on top. If you're doing this at home, I'd say let this dry up till it's just as hard as the rest of it. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and cut her open. Anyway, what we're going to do now, we're just going to take and we're going to cut a hole in the bottom of the big one for a little tea light. We're going to cut a hole on top of this one, and we're going to cut holes top bottom of the middle one and the bottom of the top one. That way we stack them all together, and hopefully the light will resonate from the bottom up to the top of the head. On second thought, I know I said we were going to go ahead and cut the hole in the bottom. We're not going to cut the hole in the bottom right now. Just the top side of this, both sides of this one, and the bottom side of this one. If you're going to use a carpenter's knife, be careful, don't cut yourself. Depending on how many layers you've made this stuff, it can be very thick and hard to cut through. If you guys got a Dremel tool, man, much faster. Get in here, just rip that thing out, Dremel it out. But for this tutorial, we'll use one of these because most of you can get your hands on one of these. This right here, this is the perfect example of why you don't want to cut through your mache when it's still damp and not completely dry. If you see that, that was coming apart on me. It's wet, it tore, it didn't make a good cut. So don't try to do this stuff early like I'm doing right here, because you run the risk of screwing up your project. Let it dry all the way through. Alright, so one more thing I want to make kind of a fast note on, because I really think it'll make a difference when we're cutting out the face. If you look down inside your pumpkin, you can see, or not your pumpkin, but this ball here, you can see that seam where we cut this thing in half and put it back together. So when I position this head on the snowman, because we're going to cut through this, I want to make sure that either one of these sides, I don't want the seam at the face. I don't want to be cutting through this seamed part whenever I do the mouth or the eyes or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark both sides of these, front and back, with a little mark. That way I know, hey, there's no seam on this side. This could face front or this side could face front, depending on how we have it positioned. But I just want to keep that in there so I'm not dealing with this seam later on when I'm cutting this thing apart. Or when I'm cutting the face into it. Okay, so to finish this up, we're going to glue it all together. And what I'm going to try to do when I glue these two together, see that? I got that hole lined up perfectly, so hopefully the light comes through. That's how I'm going to try to do it. Alright, so I had another one of those you dumbass or aha moments. I'm wanting to light this thing up, and all I'm wanting to use is just a little tea light like you use in Halloween, little fake light. Anyway, we took the time, we painted all this stuff white on the inside, and really worried about the light kind of catching in here. So I should have thought this thing through a little bit better, but this is what we get when I'm experimenting. We could have built the snowman without putting a light in it, and I want to put a light in it, so we're changing it. So to make it easier, or what I should have done in the first place, a paper towel roll. Now, I don't have an empty paper towel roll, but I've got 2 or 3 empty toilet paper rolls, which is what I'm going to use. I'm going to glue these things together. But these things are going to slide right down in here perfect. So, and before, I said we weren't going to cut the hole here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this hole out here so I can line all of this up. We'll drop these down in once they're all glued together. We'll slide all the way in, down to the bottom. Then the tea light will fit right inside this. And this tube will come up here, so the light will just channel right through all these, right to the top, or right where I want it to be. But before I glue these together, I'm going to spray paint these. I got some silver spray paint. I'm going to spray paint the inside of these with some silver. I think that'll help reflect the light a little bit better. And then we'll be back on our way. Alright, so I've got my makeshift flashlight tube made. We're going to put it inside here and move on. Now I'm going to set this just about flush right here, and I'm going to go ahead and fill in this gap with hot glue to hold it into place. There you go. Bottom's all glued up and in there. Now as far as the top goes, I don't want this much sticking out of here. So I'm going to glue this into place like we did the bottom, and I'm going to come in here and trim this off flush and then just glue the head down on top. So our Twisted Snowman armature is all done. If you go with the tube through the center like this, the previous steps where we cut these two balls in half and painted them, you don't have to do that. Just, you got to cut them in half to get them unstuck, but don't worry about painting them. Just glue them back together and then wrap them again with a bunch of layers of mache, but you don't have to waste your time painting the insides of these. I would paint the inside of this one, but I wouldn't paint the insides of these. Just make sure you paint your tube. Now, I don't know how well the light's going to shine up with just one of these little tea lights. I may want to have to stick some standard Christmas lights in here, or a small strand of something. If I do, once this is all done, we got it clayed up, I'll notch the bottom side of this thing out so that the cord will come out nice and clean, and it will still stand flush. Anyway, we've got our armature ready to go. Now all we're going to have to do next is we're going to make a batch of clay. We're going to clay this thing up, add the eyes, add the details, and then once that dries, we'll create arms for it and some kind of creepy hat, and should be pretty well on our way to finishing it up. So I'll see you guys next time. If you guys like these types of tutorials and you like what you see, please like this tutorial and subscribe. Try to keep these up, at least 1 or 2 tutorials each month or each week. We'll see how it goes. And I'll see you guys on the next tutorial. And remember, keep making something from nothing.